So I'm an author, I'm an international speaker. My two big areas of expertise are really conversational AI, and recently I've been teaching more about strategic storytelling. So kind of communication for both machines and humans. I was director of conversation design at Babylon Health, if you ever heard of that. And my teaching around the world has helped organizations like NASA, Amazon, the BBC, Monzo recently. So, I also have a recent book. You may have a copy. Come find me if you want one. It's really about becoming a more effective strategic storyteller. So I'll sign it for those who want it. And I want to reassure you, it's not just for designers. So, I want to play a little game with you now. I'm going to read this quote. There is only one condition in which we can imagine managers not needing subordinates and masters not needing slaves. This condition would be that each instrument could do its own work at the word of command or by intelligent anticipation. Okay, so here's the game. How old is that quote? Put your hand up when I name a number. 50 years. 100. We're getting there. 500. 1,000. 2,000. 1, 2. Yeah. So that was Aristotle. So we have been dreaming of speaking to machines and ordering them around for a lot longer than you might think. Of course, I'm not really convinced that he was thinking seriously about ending slavery because he owned slaves. But we're lucky to live in a time where perhaps Aristotle's dream is becoming something of a reality. But I think if we're being honest with ourselves, despite all the hype and the cool things we're seeing, the conversations we're having are not very, let's just say, reliable. Almost all development effort that we see going into AI today is an attempt to fix something that is already broken. LLMs are fundamentally unreliable, an unreliable technology. But so many of the dreams we are being sold right now rely on reliability. Hey, ChatGPT, you can create me a 14-step business plan for my dog biscuit drop shipping company. But you cannot tell me how many R's there are in the word strawberry. So how do we navigate this uncertainty? And today I'm going to kind of ignore some of the hype and talk about some of the real problems because things are changing fast. How do we deal with this unreliable, non-deterministic technology when things are changing so fast? And I'm not going to make predictions. I'm not going to offer solutions. More just kind of approaches and principles that we can adopt in a time of uncertainty. And these questions are going to seem really basic that I'm going to give you, but I promise you the things I'm going to propose as answers are somewhat useful. So, big question, what is AI? Right? Now, you might think that's a really dumb question to ask right now, but I actually hear in all of the conversations in industry a hell of a lot of confusion about this. Marvin Minsky, one of the originators of AI, he said it was a suitcase word, meaning it needs a lot of unpacking. And in fact, I've worked with some of the people at the very, very cutting edge, right, have written some of the most seminal papers in AI, and they hate the term. So the more familiar you become with the technology of AI, the less you like that term. Right? That seems to be the pattern. Now, the truth is, every trend kind of brings new language and new concepts, and often we see a lot of misinterpretation. But I think AI has been kind of the biggest offender of this. But it's not new to any technological change, right? Let's have a look at this early design for a car. This is called the horsey horseless. I love this Victorian era design. Why do they need to put a horse's head on the front of a car? Does anybody know? Right. So it turns out that whenever a new technology emerges, what happens is we don't know how to use it. So we start to apply all of the things we know, right, that existed in the past to a new technology. And I promise you, every technological revolution has this pattern. Think of early film. Early film was shot like you are standing in the theater, about that spot over there, right? It took them 10 years to work out that you could cut to a close-up, right? And every technological revolution goes through this. Television was shot like you were in a radio studio to begin with. VR is going through that. We still don't quite know what it's for. We have some ideas, and AI is going through that right now. If you just think for a moment about how the press portrays it, this image is like this. Now, I don't know about you, but I find this very backwards looking and frankly sexist. I mean, you know, we're going back to Fritz Lang, right, in Metropolis. And my point here is that you will know when we have matured our ideas about AI, when we abandon the old metaphors, when we've created new ones that give us a better way to think about it. Okay. So we'll come back to some of that stuff later. But how can we think about it today? I kind of want to just throw a tool at you that I found quite useful. My friends Matt Webb, Josh Clark, and Veronica Kindred have designed kind of a useful map in really kind of trying to figure out what the space is doing. And more importantly, what the dimensions of that space are, right? How do we categorize? How do we push and pull? How do we identify the essential qualities of the products we are creating? If we abstract up a bit, you can sort of see at the high level. Oh, sorry, that's being cut off. I do apologize. We can see at the high level what kinds of tools are being created. And also, this down here says radically adaptive. And I'm going to come back to that one in a moment. Now, my personal take is that we're confusing two key concepts in AI when we use that term. So the first one is as a conversational interface, and the second one, new metaphor incoming, a material. So I'll explain that in a moment. So AI as a conversational interface, this is really, you know, Aristotle's dream, using spoken or now typed words to interact with a machine. And it's what so many people think of when we use the word AI. Maybe we add in some personification. We'd like, the essential need here is to have machines communicate the way that we do. But there's an interesting fact here, which is that conversation is not intelligence itself. We use it as like a signal, a signpost for intelligence. We know crows, for example, are very intelligent problem solvers, but they don't talk to us. So, what's under the surface of that thing that tells us something is intelligent? Well, it's the idea that AI is actually, in many ways, going to turn out to be a material, something we use. And this is an idea from Josh Clark, whose diagram I showed you before. The problem we have today is often it's being thought of as an endpoint, right? Like a product. My point is that it's a material. It has properties, shape, a grain. It complements other things, but we don't use it on its own to build things. We must learn how best to use it, how it fits into our ecosystem, what it's good for, but not thinking of it as the end. I think in the near future, very near future, if we want to get into some predictions, startups with the word AI in them are going to seem very, very old-fashioned. AI is going to be plumbing, right? If we think about it in the background, the material. So, you know, it's kind of going to be like a database in some way, right? Like just something we don't see on the surface. So why are these distinctions so important? Why am I talking about metaphors and definitions? It's this, really. How we talk about a thing shapes the thing. And just to give you an example of that, Stuart Butterfield, when he was creating Slack, you know what he did internally? He banned the word chat. No one was allowed to use the word chat. Why did he do that? Well, he thought that if they used that as the central metaphor, it would tie their brains to the old way of thinking about it. He thought that a new interface was only possible if they would abandon the old ways of thinking and indeed the old language. So organizations often underestimate the importance of this language, the words they use, the metaphors. You know, we talk about AI as a product as if it's the end, but I don't believe it is. We're so good at repeating jargon, right? You know, but we won't innovate, truly innovate, until we kind of discover these new metaphors. I run workshops about this. I've done this recently with Monzo, and it was one of their favorite workshops ever, by the way. So, next big question. Is it reliably intelligent? And I think that an awful lot of the effort, a lot of the news coverage we see today kind of centers around this question. And of course, the answer seems to be no, but the opportunities are where we do need to make something that's true reliable. And it sort of seems unclear whether AI, without some new fundamental pushing forward, will get there. You know, you've probably heard this analogy that LLMs, for example, or Gen AI as we say now, are closer to a poet, right, than an assistant. They are guessing what is next and making probabilistic ideas about what is next. So everything we're doing to make them reliable is essentially a hack to try to make something with a very messy, unstable base reliable. I like this quote from Maggie Appleton. She said, "They're incredibly dumb and incredibly capable." And every time I see something new and cool, I'm always asking, okay, but can it get that right 100% of the time without any human oversight, right? If we're going to give it trust, if it's going to go away and be an agent, if it's going to do something for us, we really need to trust it. Or another one is just cost and labor, right? How can we make it reliable without needing like an army of people checking the content like they do in OpenAI, you know, cheap labor in Africa? So we have this weird mix, right? Stupid, smart, unreliable, expensive, rapidly evolving. What should we do? And this is one of my ideas, is capability thresholds. So we need to have a really strong awareness of when something is good enough. And I want to show you like a really simple measure of mine. Around 18 months ago, if you're watching GitHub closely, you notice that a lot of people were building agents on top of OpenAI's ChatGPT. And a lot of big claims were being made. You know, it's going to go away and do stuff for me. It's going to go away and do X, Y, Z, and it's going to be amazing. And lots of bullshitty tweets, right? And I was like, I want to try this. What's actually going on here? So I downloaded one of the most popular tools, and I came up with this really simple test. Can an agent tell me when my trash is being collected on my street? Okay? I wanted to start with something really, really simple and plausible. I live in Brighton in the UK, and this is the page on our local government where you can try and answer this question. And the tools I tried, they would just go round and round and round in circles trying to answer this really simple question. And not once would they ask me for the key piece of information, right, which is the postcode or the street. So really not intelligent and not reliable, despite all the claims being made. But last week, I found something that can kind of do it. It's a new hyped tool called Skyvern. I don't know if anybody's used that. And it can do it, but it takes 5 minutes. It's incredibly slow. It costs 50 cents to use this, and I have to provide it with the right information up front. It's not smart enough to get to this form and then ask me for the right piece of information. So I'm extremely skeptical of a lot of these claims at the moment. So this is my dumb threshold for intelligence, right? When do I know it can do this? But I think there are many domains where we need to think about these thresholds. So reasoning being one of the most interesting ones, coupled with reliability. Can it do it 100% of the time? Just think for a moment about how long it is Elon Musk has been promising self-driving cars. Super hard problem that needs better reliability than humans to gain trust. Anyway, cost, right? like, this is the hidden thing. The VC money is hiding a lot of the cost from us at the moment. When you actually break it down, it is enormously costly to do these things. And the final one, I think, is actually possibly the most important, interoperability. Because a lot of the tasks we're dreaming about actually rely on systems talking to each other, which is why hard agree on the whole API thing, right? We need to make things interoperable. That is what gave Amazon its competitive edge, if you know the story there. So what I'm getting at here is we need a sort of traffic light system for reliability. These are the 4 areas I've been thinking about. And if I were in an organization today with lots of big budgets, maybe not so big based on the last panel, I don't know, I would actually have people just testing this. I think it's that important, that their only job is to keep sucking in those new products and ideas and models and just playing back to the organization, no, we haven't hit this threshold, or we have hit this one. Okay, another big question. What can we do with it? And I think that, you know, we've heard so much discussion about where it's going. And today, AI, as we know, means mostly replacing what we have today, like customer service channels. Sure, we can save money, improve the experience, maybe. But new technologies do seed new types of products, things that weren't possible. That's what we're kind of really looking for in many ways. Think of smartphone seeding the Ubers of the world. And we won't really find those answers by looking only at what exists. So how have organizations in the past seeded radically new ideas? I want to borrow a concept from architecture. This is a photo taken at Omar in the Netherlands. So Omar is a famous architecture firm, and they do this thing called brute force design. So they give architecture students hot wire and foam, and instead of asking them to perfect one idea, they say, I want you to make me 1,000 different shapes out of hot wire and foam, right? Now, where we are today, where things are changing so fast that we can't see 5 years ahead, and it's very difficult to make predictions, this is the kind of thing I think we should be doing, right? Making lots and lots of varied prototypes, seeding lots and lots of different ideas to see what's interesting. So, I don't know, here's a challenge for you. If you are managing a big innovation budget today, and you're building something big and trying to envisioning that big banking assistant, my question is this: would it be more productive to break that budget into small pieces and try hundreds of small ideas rather than one big idea? And related to that is this idea of facilitating unlikely collaboration. So you all know Xerox PARC, right? Yeah, Xerox PARC gave us networking, the Windows GUI as stolen by Apple, the laser printer. Well, one of the key ingredients of Xerox PARC was that they brought together people from radically different disciplines. There were musicians, psychologists, engineers. Like, they brought together a rich set of disciplines. The original Walkman is the result of 2 unrelated departments innovating, right? There was one group in the 70s at Sony making a tape recorder for journalists, something portable for journalists. Another group were making lightweight headphones. And it was only when a senior executive was kind of wandering around the building did he go, if I put these 2 things together, I could maybe listen to music on a plane. So what might that look like in a bank? I don't know. I don't work very closely with finance, but I'd really love to see, if I was in control of these budgets, I would be pairing weird people together. Like, that's what I would do. I would pair an engineer with somebody completely unlikely who doesn't normally build software, right? I would just take disciplines, designers, engineers, and I would try to seed very weird new ideas. Just go to the boundaries and the edges. Give them lots of time, space, and the safety to fail. Don't give them goals. A lot of the time, really deep innovation is not short-term led. It's not goal-led. It's exploring. It's ground up. Okay, last big challenge. How should we design for AI? I think in the excitement about LLMs, a very simple fact about the conversational interface has kind of often been overlooked. It's just not appropriate for everything. And to explain this, I kind of need to tell you about what affordance is. So if you think about a door handle suggests its shape. It suggests how it should be used, right? So we know that this is where we put our hands. Buttons on a GUI are modeled on real-life buttons so that they have affordance. Somebody knows that they can be pushed upon. And the problem with any conversational interface is that they don't really have affordance. Yeah, you see those little suggestion chips, but the underlying problem is you don't know how intelligent it really is, right? You don't know what it can and cannot do. This is why Amazon Alexa was so disappointing, because people would try it for a while, they would hit those limits, and then they became very conservative in their behavior because they realized it was very limited. And the reason for this is that our expectations of human conversation are hundreds of thousands of years old, right? When we're speaking to an intelligent thing or we're using speech or language, we have an inbuilt genetic expectation of intelligence. But GUIs are, what, 30, 40, 50 years old? Our expectations of GUIs are not quite so ingrained in us, so we are more forgiving with them. Another problem is that conversational interfaces push cognitive effort back onto the users. So think of the difference between, oh, that button's not rendering properly. Anyway, find flights and doing this, right? Giving a prompt to find the right flight. That is guided. It doesn't take a lot of cognitive effort for me to follow the trail. This requires me to type, to think, to process a lot. I think we kind of underestimate just how much work that is. And the answer here, of course, as some people have touched on, is going multimodal. So when we think about multimodal, I'm nearly done. Think about the time when a waiter reads you the specials at your table, right? By the time they've finished speaking, you've forgotten what they said at the beginning, right? And you need a menu. Like, we can't do everything with language and speech. It's like it would be better if you went up to the counter at a cafe and you can see the menu, you can see the food. You need that mix of modes. So the future interface is multimodal. I just want to show you a really interesting adaptive example of this. Gemini they've been demoing this thing called Bespoke UI. So this thing here that we see at the bottom was generated on the fly by Gemini. So they instructed it to create a custom-built interface. So the future of these interfaces is one where it takes away the language, it will take away the conversational part, and occasionally builds dynamic interfaces that are more appropriate to what the user has asked. Now, this, of course, is giving design decisions to the AI, but I want to kind of give you an opposing design principle, which is that we should be teaching AI good design. When I see internal prototypes for LLMs today, they're often impressive at first glance, but then when you start to ask questions, they're really not doing a very good job. I want to show you an example of this as pointed out by Hans van Dam at the Conversational Design Institute. The difference here, if you ask a question like, what is the capital of Romania? An ideal chat response is to put Bucharest at the beginning of the sentence, but the ideal voice response is at the end. That's how the design should work. So why is that? Well, when people scan, when they're reading, you want the first information that's most important to be first, right? But when you're listening to something, you want the key information to be at the end because you want it to be the last thing the user remembers in what you said. And LLMs do not achieve this level of good fine-grained design. So you need to be training your systems alongside people who really know what good looks like. So these are the principles I've shared with you today. If you want to take a quick picture of those, some of the things I've mentioned. And now I'm just going to give you the last one. I promise I'm done.
Thank you.
Which is this. Make AI humane, not human. I really do believe we shouldn't be emulating humans. We should be just making things work better for humans, right? i.e. humane. This is a principle that's actually used inside at Google for Google Assistant. I don't know if they got it from me, but they do say something very similar. And they were thinking about if Google Assistant was too good, a child might not want to go out and play with their friends, and that would be a bad outcome, right? So we don't want to make things that feel like humans. hence humane, not human. I once worked with a large energy company, and their plan was to shut down all of their customer contact centers, okay? I started listening to the calls, and one of the most common calls that I heard that day was somebody has died, like a parent has died, and I need help figuring out how to close their account. Should you be talking to an AI about that? Absolutely not. We always need humans in the loop. Not a terribly new idea. I'll close now. The first chatbot, Eliza, created by Joseph Weizenbaum in the 60s at MIT. It was very simple. It was scripted. It would help, it would just empathize with you with these kind of slightly vacuous parroting statements. But he realized that people were treating it like a real person, and he said, I had not realized that extremely short exposures to a relatively simple computer program could induce powerful delusional thinking in quite normal people. And so he turned it off. I will leave it there. Mulțumim, is that the right way to say it?
Mulțumesc. Yes, amazing. Wow.